Hello, everyone, and welcome to the White Rabbit Podcast. My name is Matt Kraus, coming to you from Bandırma, Turkey. My co-host, Alper Rosanes, is coming to you from Barcelona, Spain. And our guest today is Joe Fromandi. Joe runs a strategy consultancy in Chicago, Illinois, called Think Bold. Bold as in B-O-U-L-D, as in Boulder, Colorado, where, if I'm correct, Joe, Boulder, Colorado is where you started the business, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah. And so Joe helps business owners identify and break through the challenges that are holding their business back, mainly by focusing on business strategy and market engagement issues, which we're kind of going to be talking about today. And I like to think of him as the company doctor. And I also want to mention that Joe is a huge fan of the movie The Matrix.
Absolutely.
After which this podcast is named, after The Matrix. And sure, the earlier White Rabbit references are, Lewis Carroll and Jefferson Airplane, but our podcast name is a reference to an early scene in the Matrix movie where Neo spots the tattoo on the girl's shoulder and then accepts the invite to the club where he meets Trinity. And
I did not know that, by the way.
Yeah.
The Lewis Carroll and Jefferson Airplane references, I had no idea about them. Well, for me, they have always been the scene from the movie.
It's always
the shoulder.
It's always been Keanu Reeves. The Matrix, or that reference is Keanu.
I was
Reeves.
like, what Lewis are you talking about? It's Keanu, man.
Well, truth be told, we do have to admit that, yes, the original, before there was the Matrix, there was Lewis Carroll and the Jefferson Airplane. Okay, but for us, it's always the Matrix. So anyway, So anyway, Joe. So Joe, say a quick hi to our listeners, and then I will tell them some more intro stuff.
Sure. Yeah. First, hi, Alper and Matt. So longtime listener on the podcast. So happy to be here and happy to be able to chat a little bit with your listeners.
Welcome.
I met Joe a few years back during a series of coaching calls led by Brad Ferris. That name, Brad Ferris, that's a name that you might recognize because he is one of our favorite podcast guests. So anyway, Joe struck me as unusually thoughtful and articulate, and I've been trying to get him on the podcast for a couple years now. So it's a great pleasure to finally have him here with us today. Joe and I were talking the other day, and we were trying to decide what we were going to talk about on the podcast. And we came up with a bunch of really cool ideas, but I couldn't decide which one we should go with. So I decided that we should go with them all. And then I thought, well, why don't we just use my business as a case study, a surgery patient, basically. And we can use the podcast kind of like a surgery table and open me up on the table and let Joe ask questions and talk things through as he operates, kind of like a surgeon operating on a patient. So I'm a little bit nervous today because I'm basically offering myself up for surgery, but we'll get to that in a second. First, let's wrap up this intro. So tell me, Joe, is there anything that you would like our listeners to know that I have not mentioned yet?
I appreciate that introduction. Probably just a couple things to share for context here. I like to think of myself as curious by nature and analytical by training. So I started out I started out my career as an engineer, very focused on the technical, the details. Everything has to be just so, but I kind of leveraged that into different roles later on business development and marketing. Those same traits as an engineer, analytical and curious, transfer over to that. And then certainly to what we're talking about here today, strategy, analysis, market engagement, asking a lot of questions to get to the core of things and whatnot. So looking forward to our discussion here.
And Joe, before I forget, tell our listeners if they want to get in touch with you after the podcast, where can they find you?
Yeah, the best way to reach me is via LinkedIn. You can see I have quite a number of posts there as well. I have a series called Let's Talk About It, since that's usually what I do with entrepreneurs. Um, but yeah, you could DM me or find out whatever you'd like to know about me on LinkedIn.
Excellent. So thank you, Joe. And let's get down to the main topic for today. And the main topic for today is, as I mentioned, using my business as a guinea pig or case study, a surgery patient. And Joe's basically going to walk in here like a surgeon and work and work his magic and talk us through some of his thinking. So
isn't that a fancy way of saying we're going to get free consultation?
Yeah, this is basically let's
we'll see about that.
Let's use the podcast as an excuse to get some free consultation from Joe. So anyway, so you tell me, Joe. So where should we start? The other day, one of the things that you and I were talking about was a new service that I'm offering. Let's call it Service B, and how I am inside the bottle. And so I end up thinking that the connection between Service A, my old service, and Service B, my new service, I end up thinking that that connection is intuitive and obvious. But to my potential customers, they're seeing things from outside the bottle. And so Service A and Service B, in their perspective, are in completely different worlds. So should we start there or should we start with something else? So you tell me, Joe.
I think it's a great place to start. It would be worth kind of diving into the specifics of what we're talking about, so there's context. But yeah, the example you just mentioned about reading inside or outside the bottle, I know you guys are a fan of that expression, right?
Yeah.
Where if you're a business owner and you have challenges, you try to work through it, but the expression is you can't read the label when you're inside the bottle, so someone from the outside sees what's there. And what I was suggesting to Matt was the potential of switching that around. Sometimes labels, once in a while you find a bottle that has printing on the inside of the label.
Yeah.
And I think that's where this was. So Matt was describing to me, I'm aware of his current business and what he's looking to get into. I didn't see the connection. So that's where I shared. It's like you're still reading it inside. There's so many things inside your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, the audience doesn't know yet. So I didn't see the connection either.
And to make it more concrete for our listeners who are wondering, what is this Service A and Service B that these guys are talking about? So Service A is basically presentation skills. So for 10 years, I was helping people with their presentations, whether it was helping them with their slide deck or whether it was helping them with their speaking skills or whatever. In some capacity, I was helping with them with their presentation skills. And then this new Service B is selling abroad. So let's say in Turkey, you're a company in Turkey and you're well established in Turkey and you have your markets in Turkey and you know your customers and your profits and stuff from Turkey. And now you need to sell to another country and you're having a hard time doing that. And so presentation skills to selling abroad. And I see the jump between there as, obvious, but as Joe reminded me, it's not. And this was kind of like a bolt of lightning to me. So tell me more, Joe. What do you think is going on here?
Let's go down the same path we were on. I asked what were the transferable skills between presentations, as you see it, and selling abroad. What were the parallels that you saw could transfer over?
The parallels that I saw were trust. Trust is the common denominator between the two. If you are doing a presentation and you need to convince people to fund a project or to approve a project, to greenlight something, if you are, say, presenting to your boss, which has been kind of my bread and butter for years, if you are presenting to your boss and you want your boss to approve your plan for the next year or something like that, you need his trust in you. And if you are trying to sell abroad, you need your customer to trust that you are going to come through on these promises that you're making. So from my perspective, so both are using trust. So for me, from my perspective, it's like half of a step away. These two things are half of a step away from each other, but apparently to other people, they are in completely different worlds.
Right. So I think as you're explaining that there, I mean, clearly trust would apply to both. Right. I'm trying to recall from our discussion before. I think you listed off a set of attributes in presentations. You just now provided a lot of context about how the two relate, but it's with that explanation that you can see there's a relation between the two. I didn't hear that initially, so that's why I started asking about that. But let's explore it a little bit.
Okay.
How would you physically go from the presentation training over to selling abroad? What would that kind of training look like?
It's basically public speaking training. In a presentation, you have to know how to stand up in front of a group and give a presentation or give a speech. And not later on, after, let's say, your first 5 or 10 sales abroad, then you're into stuff like CAC, the cost of customer acquisition, and stuff like that. You're into and SDRs, sales development representatives. You're into stuff like that. But for the first 5 to 10 sales, the bulk of your work is building your trust with customers. And often the way that people do that is they'll go to a conference and they'll speak at a conference. So, and they need to be up there on stage and be fairly coherent. And so both are kind of public speaking skills. So that's where the transfer happens. Or if someone comes to me and they say, hey, I want some help getting these first 5 or 10 sales abroad, a lot of what happens is public speaking work.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So there's a little detail there that kind of helps us fill in a little bit.
Okay.
Right. So again, initially speaking on this, I hear selling abroad, and what comes to my mind is, what are the techniques for selling? How do I sell? How do I sell products abroad or services abroad? But where you're coming from is enabling someone to become effective at selling, trustworthy at selling. So as I just noted, it's really about public speaking. So even as you articulate what it is, standing in front of an audience, going to a conference, speaking in front of a conference, et cetera, it sounds like there's a specific audience that you're looking for, a specific target you have in mind. I would say that probably most people in sales, and I know because I was in it myself, don't stand, at conferences and speak. So it sounds like you might be looking at executives or senior level leaders or something of that sort. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that would be correct. And another thing that occurs to me, and a comment that you're making now, and based on some information that I've mentioned here that I didn't mention earlier when we were first talking, because the conversation now is a little more advanced, is that it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Joe, but it sounds like one of the things that you're also saying is that the articulation makes it a lot clearer. So like when you and I were talking about this a couple weeks ago, you're like, what the hell is this guy smoking? What's he talking about here? And then all of a sudden you're kind of understanding what it is. And all I've done is had a couple weeks to think about things and make things a little bit clearer. It's not like I had to go from A to Z, a huge jump, help out here. I just had to go from A to B, a much smaller jump. Am I hearing you correctly, Joe?
I think you're spot on with that. Um, and I think that's a challenge that a lot of business owners make. They have big aspirations or a goal that's quite a leap for them. And I mean, it's kind of our nature. We want to just get to the end, quickly, but it's a matter of really dividing it down to smaller chunks, smaller steps, and thinking those through, right? So even right now, for instance, this little discussion we've had, I'm thinking that your offering is less about selling abroad as it is public speaking for international salespeople. So it's
Interesting.
training that. I didn't quite get how what you were doing related to selling abroad. How is that a service? But now when you start talking about public speaking for international sales success, I think that hones it a little, narrows it down a little bit more and also does something else. It helps to identify who your target audience is,
Mm-hmm.
who you're trying to reach.
Mm-hmm.
And it would also help you hone your product, focus it on the needs of those people. That
Okay.
makes sense?
Yeah, yeah. And let's take a pause here for a second. So Alper, do you have questions or comments about what we've been talking about so far?
Not specifically about what you have been talking, but I have a question for Joe. And since we used the analogy of you walking into surgery when the company needs it, I have two questions. The first one is, at what stage do you usually get called? Is it like visiting a doctor? There's pain, it lasts for a while, and you're like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to take care of this of myself. Is there a point at which the company says, okay, we cannot do this by ourselves. We need to call in the experts, and then they get to you? Is there such a point?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that question. I've done both. So I've worked with startups from the very beginning where they're formulating an idea. One client, an early stage startup, called it a tornado of ideas in our heads that needed to be wrestled down to basically a nut. How we're going to move forward. But it's not the norm. The norm is, as you just stated. So a company is trying to get into a new market. They're trying to grow. They're trying to do something, and something in their business has stalled. They've reached a plateau. They can't break through it. They've usually made many attempts to get through that. And now it's a matter of, let's have a conversation. The surgery part is, let's ask a lot of questions and dive in, figure out what is causing the symptom that you have of being stuck, and then unwind that, unpack that to figure out how to solve it.
Okay. That's great, because my follow-up is actually directly related to that. And I was going to ask, what is the most common type of complication that you see in this sense, from the words that you use? What do you see companies getting stuck most frequent? In what area? Or is there such an area, by the way? Or is every single company a unique story?
I would say it is trying to get to a new point by doing things the same ways. That makes sense?
Yes.
So okay, this has helped us grow to this point. And now I want to get somewhere else, but I'm going to keep doing it the same way I've been doing it. And that is pretty much, you could think of anything else. If you have a machine that's operating to its maximum, you've optimized it, it's running well, it's by definition at capacity at that point, right? Trying to expect it to do more is not going to, doing the same thing is not going to get you to the new place. So how can we break free from that? Or how can we, find a little area where we can apply our skill sets to grow elsewhere? So.
Okay. And since they are the original, let's say, creators of the company or creators of this machine, let's say, that came to this point, why do you think they would be stuck and not go back to the drawing board and say something like, hey, we have seen this before, we have come so far, so let's regroup our thinking and let's find a way to overcome this obstacle?
Yeah, that would be wonderful if we could just do that for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
It's very logical. It's absolutely what
it makes absolute sense.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, this does not typically happen. I'll give you a little example. There's of why it is. It- Essentially, the answer is you get so busy doing the things that you need to do to maintain your business right now that it's difficult to allocate really the time and the focus and the energy to branch out into different areas or to get into different modes of operating. Sometimes you need to protect what you've got going on already while still trying to eke out a little mind share to move into a new direction. It could be very distracting, very difficult. So it's really helpful to bring in someone else who's not part of that machine
Mhm.
and can ask questions and can listen to what the person's saying and maybe draw it out or simplify it. That helps them get focused and say, oh, all right, we can apply this part to our new interest, new area that
Okay.
we want to go into.
So they need a fresh perspective which is not
perspective.
tainted by the years of this is how things get done here and this is what we should apply, although
Ab-
it doesn't work.
Absolutely. And I would go a little step further too. So if this for a larger organization that has maybe people that are involved in different roles and they're performing different functions,
Mhm.
two things often happen. One is that there's individuals that might be responsible for maintaining the status quo, and they are by nature resistant to changing it. They don't even want to suggest changing it. Others might be concerned that maybe the function or the idea they had that they're pursuing might be the cause of the issue. So now people
Okay.
get concerned about how am I going to look, with that. So we just try to create a kind of a safe place to have an open conversation to really explore what's going on. So that's
Okay.
one of the things I look for as well, Alper, if I'm engaging with a company, is that are we at the point where we're willing and interested to really dig in and identify what the issue is so we could figure a path to resolution?
Okay. So they need to come to the table with an open mind and the possibility that they will learn
Right.
something and find out. Okay.
Alper, do you mind if I jump in here with a
Yeah, I
question
don't
for
have
Joe?
more questions.
Okay. So, Joe, you mentioned that sometimes you see a path forward, and you and maybe some of the others in the organization see a path forward, but that there is some resistance coming from elsewhere in the company. And so one of your jobs or one of the things that you work with people on is how to resolve that resistance. Am I hearing you correctly so far?
Well, at least to acknowledge it
Okay.
and potentially resolve it, right?
And
They have to make the decision if they want to.
what are some of the reasons that cause this resistance? If the resistance is there, what are some of the reasons that it is there?
Yeah. So one thing is NIH, which is code for not invented here.
Okay.
Um,
Good. Wait, I was thinking National Institutes of Health, but
no,
could,
right?
could
Yeah,
you say
it's not that big.
so could you say
No,
that
this is
again?
going
Not
back to
invented here.
yeah,
Is
I'm
that
going back to my engineering days. So
okay?
I've carried over a lot of things from my engineering days.
Okay.
So engineers notorious for wanting to create new things and design new things themselves. So you could show them, hey, this is how it's been done over here, and they say NIH, not invented here. I want to be able to do it. Um, so there's resistance associated with that. There is of course, well, this is the way we've always done things. Huge point of resistance right there. It's hard to change momentum. Uh, either people that are in their roles,
Yeah.
or um, for some reason want to protect the status quo.
Uh-huh.
Another thing that's a big point of resistance is we've already tried that and it didn't work.
Okay.
Um,
Sure.
Now I always like hearing I always like hearing that because there's a lot of questions that come out of that, right?
Okay.
Um, I'm not an expert, for instance, in Facebook ads.
Oh.
Years ago, I had a client that says, "Here's what I've tried. This didn't work." Facebook ads. She was completely against it. Right? We're never doing that again. And
Uh-huh.
we eventually got around to going through the assessment of her situation, some diagnosis, and the topic of Facebook ads came up. And really where it was coming from is you can do a tactic. You could perform a tactic or a function, such as an ad. That's a type of promotion, right? But if you don't have the right focus, if you don't know who your audience is, if you don't have a strategy for how you're going to engage that audience, yeah, you could place an ad. You may or may not have success. You probably won't have success with it.
Uh-huh.
So you can't base your desire to pursue an approach or not on past experience. It's like, what was the basis for doing it? So we like to explore that sort of thing.
And to what extent, it occurs to me that if I am a founder and I have hired Joe, and Joe is recommending to me, or not recommending to me, but let's say for this example, recommending to me, Joe is recommending to me some ads of some sort. And I'm like, well, we tried Facebook ads before and they didn't work. So there are a couple things. One is that I actually think that Facebook ads don't work. Another is that I am just resisting the fact that it's kind of like not invented here. I'm resisting the fact that Joe is waltzing in here and he is trying to help me with my business and I should be knowing everything. Do you run into that a lot? Resistance because people think that they should be knowing everything.
Because they should be knowing everything?
Yeah.
Sometimes I did, and now I usually don't.
Wow.
That's
How did you
because
get around it?
I ask better questions. If you want, if you want better answers, ask better questions. So right from the get-go, I'll be asking questions, and I'm looking for what responses I'm getting. For instance, why are you looking to engage a strategy consultant for your business? And if I get the answer, look, I'm just too busy. I know exactly what we need to do. I just don't have the time. I need someone else to come in and take care of that for me.
Oh,
On the surface, that might sound okay, but it's really not. If they know
I
exactly
hear a lot of
what to do,
problems there actually. With
oh
this
boy, you're going to be butting heads.
Butting
and
heads,
there's
yeah.
gonna be- all sorts of things. So, I mean, you guys have experience with that sort of thing, but surprisingly, a lot don't. Well, I shouldn't say. Probably any seasoned consultant does. They know what that's about. But a business owner doesn't yet know how to engage a consultant if they're giving off messaging like that. They're not open and ready, to accept input. They just want someone to execute. And that's not my role. It's kind of like going into literal surgery and telling the doctor, now, I know exactly what to do in here, right? I just don't have the time. I'll let you know how to do it, though.
I just don't have the time. And by the way, I'll be unconscious. So
that too, But if it weren't for that,
I would cut my spleen myself. Yes, of course.
Exactly.
So Alper, it's about we're getting near time to wrap up for the day. So do you have any remaining questions that you want to run by Joe?
No, I'm good.
So Joe, thank you very much for joining us. And by the way, Joe, just so you know, the free consulting work that we got from you today earlier in the episode, that was actually immensely useful. I'm going to have to think about that now. So
I
thank you, Joe.
appreciate it. We should chat more about it.
We should. All right. Well, thanks again, Joe. Talk to you later.
Thanks very much.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.